The pyramids are one of the most extraordinary constructions ever built by humankind. And while we know that ancient people were clever and capable, it's hard to understand how they were able to construct such massive structures without modern technology. So what tools did the ancient builders use to make the pyramids? Let's find out in today's episode of How Did They Do It? It is important to remember that over the course of human history, there have been many different cultures and civilizations that have built pyramids. For example, there are thousands of pyramids in Mesoamerica, but when people talk about the pyramids, they are usually referring to the ones that were constructed in Egypt around 4,500 years ago, during the Old Kingdom period. At their peak, there were an estimated 100 pyramids scattered across the Giza Plateau, with only a few still standing to this day. While each pyramid required hundreds of thousands of workers and took decades to complete, at least according to historical records, it all started with just a few simple tools. One of the main tools used to build the pyramids was the copper chisel. The ancient Egyptians didn't have metal chisels like those used by masons today, but instead they would use chisels made from copper because it was the only metal available in Egypt at the time. However, there was a problem with this. Copper is a relatively soft metal, so while it could cut through stone fairly easily, the tool itself would quickly become damaged and dull. But this wasn't much of an issue for the ancient builders because they had another very useful material on hand: dolerite. Dolerite is a type of volcanic rock that has a very hard and durable composition, which makes it perfect for making tools and weapons. The ancient Egyptians mined dolerite in the nearby areas of Aswan and used it to make axe heads and arrowheads. However, dolerite was also incredibly difficult to work with, even for the ancient Egyptians. It was so hard, in fact, that it would often break the copper tools that were used to shape it. But if a copper tool broke inside of a quarry while shaping a block of diorite, it wasn't a disaster. All the ancient workers had to do was grab another copper tool and continue working. Over time, the diorite would eventually be shaped into a sharp edge, which could then be used as a chisel. In other words, the ancient Egyptians created an entirely new tool simply by discarding broken pieces of other tools into a harder material until they were shaped just right. This was actually a common practice in ancient Egypt. For example, old tools and pieces of tools would be thrown into the river and then dredged up somewhere else where they would be reused and reshaped. Sometimes these tools would be discarded again after being used for something else, and this process would just keep repeating itself over and over. Another advantage of dolerite is that its hardness made it highly resistant to erosion and weathering, meaning that tools made from it could last for centuries without breaking down. The diorite hammer was probably the most important tool for the construction of the pyramids. These hammers would have blunt edges to prevent them from destroying the precision cuts of the stone blocks. Instead, the weight of the hammer would simply chip away at the excess stone until the surface was smooth. The ancient Egyptians also used hammers to shape the stones before they were put into place. To move the heavy stones into position, the builders used levers. These were probably made from large wooden beams that could be placed under the stones to lift them and then roll them into place. Once the stones were set, the builders would fill the gaps between them with mortar, which may have been made from gypsum or a mixture of clay and sand. However, building the pyramids wasn't just about setting stones in place. It also required digging a deep and wide ditch around the base of each pyramid. This ditch was called a moat, and it served a dual purpose. Firstly, it helped to stabilize the structure by preventing erosion. But secondly, it also provided a source of clay that could be used to make bricks for building the interior chambers of the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians would dig up the clay from the moat and then let it dry in the sun before shaping it into bricks by hand. After this, they would be placed around the perimeter of the inner chamber to form a protective wall. This would help to keep the burial chamber dry and protected from outside elements, ensuring the safety of the pharaoh's body and belongings. But how exactly Did the ancient Egyptians get all of the stone blocks to the top of the pyramids to build them? Well, we don't know for sure, but there are a few theories. One theory is that the builders used ramps to move the stones up the pyramid. Ramps could have been made from wood or brick and would have allowed the builders to move stones to higher and higher levels. Another theory is that the builders used a combination of ramps and levers to move the stones. Levers could have been used to lift stones up a ramp and then rolled into place. It's also possible that the ancient Egyptians used boats to transport the stones up the sides of the pyramids. This theory is supported by the fact that some of the stones found at the top of the pyramids are actually water-worn. This means that they were likely transported via the Nile River. When it comes to the tools the ancient Egyptians used to quarry the stones, unfortunately, not much is known. However, we can assume that they used basic tools such as hammers and chisels to carve the stones into shape. They may have also used saws to cut the stones into more precise angles. Overall, it's safe to say that the ancient Egyptians were incredibly skilled builders and engineers. They were able to create some of the most impressive structures in the world, using nothing more than simple tools and manpower. The pyramids are a testament to their skill and ingenuity and continue to amaze us even today. Now it's your turn. What did you find most surprising about how the pyramids were built? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other videos about ancient archaeological discoveries and mysteries. There's something for everyone. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these.